The Strait of Hormuz is absolutely vital to global shipping, especially for energy markets. And right now, it's under threat. That's because Iran is sort of poking the United States in the eye, mocking the United States, even as they continue to pretend to negotiate with the US over the removal of their nuclear program. So, we're going to talk about all of that on today's Hot Zone and break down the key stats and the importance of this global waterway. Now, let's start with the map here. We got the Straits of Hormuz off here. Let's see, right there. This is the Straits of Hormuz, about 22 miles in width. There are only two lanes that go through there, shipping lanes, one each direction. And so it's very narrow choke point. And you might think as you zoom out here that, well, what's the big deal for global shipping if the only thing they can't reach is this Persian Gulf in here? Well, it's important because about 20% of global oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's 17 to 18 million barrels per day in recent years. And about a third of all liquefied natural gas also goes through there that's traded globally. And so even though it's only 21 miles wide at the narrowest point, uh, it is highly vulnerable to disruption. And right now, what Iran is doing is they're telling the world, guess what? If the United States bombs Iran, we will do what the Houthis have done in the Bab al-Mandab Straits and close down global shipping going through the Straits of Hormuz. This is pretty huge because it would really affect, of course, the oil exporting countries, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, and the UAE, but and Qatar, which is the world's largest LNG exporter. They are highly dependent. There are a lot of countries, though, that are highly dependent on the oil and natural gas that comes through the Straits of Hormuz. So you're talking China, India, Japan, South Korea, a lot of European nations. And so that makes the Strait of Hormuz a flashpoint between Iran and Oman and the UAE. So Iran has repeatedly threatened to close the strait if they are provoked with sanctions or military strikes. However, they're going further than that now. What we're seeing is Iran is jamming the GPS signals in the Straits of Hormuz. I keep pulling up that wrong video. They're jamming the GPS signals in that whole area. And what that does is makes it harder for ships that are going through those two channels to stay in their lane. That puts them at risk of running into one another, but it also puts them at risk of accidentally floating into Iranian territorial waters. And that's exactly what Iran wants. They want a ship to stray into Iranian territorial waters so that they can arrest that ship, basically, take it over, and hold it as a bargaining chip. Now, the US Navy maintains a strong presence in that area to keep it open for international traffic. But what happens if it closes? Well, this is something that the Trump administration needs to think about because as we talk about the possibility of a kinetic strike on Iran if they don't play ball in terms of negotiations, then the United States has got to think about how many more assets are we going to have to put in that area in order to keep the Strait of Hormuz open? Because if we don't, alternative shipping routes are pretty limited, and oil and gas prices globally could skyrocket overnight. And it would be significantly more expensive to pipe that oil out of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Iraq than to bring it by ship. So even a temporary closure could trigger a global economic shock and a potential larger military conflict. Because if Iran was blocking the Strait of Hormuz, the world could not stand by and let that stay. So there likely will be a wider war. So this presents a dilemma for the United States. We're seeing Iran essentially play games with us in terms of our negotiations. Steve Witkoff has said the United States' red line is Iran cannot have any ability to enrich uranium at all. And the Iranians are saying, we're not even going to justify that with an answer. They say there's no way we're giving up our ability to enrich uranium. As a matter of fact, this video I keep accidentally showing you is of the Ayatollah Khamenei giving a speech over the weekend to some of his very zealous supporters, let's say. I'm not sure if this was mandatory fun or not, but he says some of the things the U.S. president said in his recent visit to the region are not even worthy of a response. And of course, everybody yells "Allah Akbar," yeah, whatever, blah blah blah. I'm gonna fast forward that because they're all like trained seals here. Death to those who oppose the rule of the jurisprudent. Death to America. Death to England. They're all saying that together, so they're obviously being coached, right? And you better be excited about being there, right? He says the level of things he said is so low that it shames the speaker himself as well as the American people. So this is where President Trump was saying, we're close to a deal with Iran. Iran is about to make a deal. They want to make a deal. They don't want to get attacked. The Iranians are saying, no, not so much. So by threatening the Strait of Hormuz, and not just threatening it, but actually engaging in asymmetric warfare against the rest of the world in the Straits of Hormuz, what Iran is saying is we have some cards to play too if you decide to go the kinetic route. And the United States might have a whole bunch of bombers and fighters and ships over in that region. But unless we're able to flood enough assets into that region to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, you're talking about a massive upset in the price of oil and natural gas, which is going to affect essentially everything. And because that flow serves all of the world's largest economies. There's no two ways about it. Okay. So the United States is less dependent on that oil than it used to be. And it's become a net exporter of oil and gas thanks to President Trump. But we still would be affected. And, there's one country that is hoping against hope that this actually happens, that they end up closing the Straits of Hormuz, and that's Russia. Because if they close the Straits of Hormuz, the price of oil is going to skyrocket. If the price of oil skyrockets, then Russia is saved because right now they're struggling to pay the bills because the price of oil is too low for them. And since they have to sell it at a big discount around the world, even $60 a barrel is it's not enough for them to be able to continue prosecuting this war long term. So don't be surprised if Russia starts engaging in their own asymmetric warfare to make this more possible, more likely, right? The Russians have said they are against, of course, the United States striking Iran, but in the case of a war with Iran that makes oil prices go up, Russia might just choose high oil prices over their alliance with Iran. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about what's going on in also in that same region as Iran has deployed these missile-capable fast attack craft and surveillance technology to islands around the Persian Gulf. So on May 10th, a small craft, which they believe was Iranian, was seen harassing commercial ships northwest of the UAE. And that means like a small craft, which could easily be a boat-borne IED, a BBID, and it was trying to collide with some commercial ships just off the shore of the UAE. As a matter of fact, it was right near that palm-shaped island that they made that they called Jebel Ali. So that's extremely concerning. And that's the kind of thing that I could see Russia actually causing something like that to happen if they didn't do it themselves in order to create the conditions for a blockade of the Straits of Hormuz so that the price of oil went up. Now, these negotiations between the United States and Iran are not going well. The foreign minister of Iran called Steve Witkoff's conditions, which is getting rid of all of their enrichment capability, unrealistic, and insists that Iran will continue to enrich uranium. Now, it's reported, there's rumors that the mediators have suggested a 3-year pause on enrichment, which would really go back to the JCPOA. I mean, that's essentially what they had there. The JCPOA levels were 3.75% that they could enrich to. Right now, they're enriching to 60%. But there's too much of a risk even with that, because even from 3.75%, according to experts, former nuclear inspectors and things like that, Iran could, with their new centrifuges that they've created, enrich weapons grade uranium in less than a month, about 25 days, if they decided to do so. So giving them any enrichment capability essentially gives them a nuclear bomb. It's about the same. And Iran knows this, and the rest of the world knows this as well. So that's the crux of what I wanted to talk about today. We also, on the live, we get into what's happening in Syria and why that's a big problem, and how the United States is really starting to be sidelined in a lot of these global geopolitics because we're just, we're not a reliable partner in many cases, or at least we're being seen that way by our allies. And that's bad for not just America, but the entire world. Okay, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast, and go over to chuckholton.com, where we've got a lot of extra stuff like a trip to Panama. You want to come to Panama and you want to meet with me, and I'll show you around the place where we live here in Panama. And we'll have a great time. We just did that back in April, and it was a wonderful trip. We're going to do it again in October, and you can get all the information about that by going to chuckholton.com. So check that out, and we'll hope to see you here in Panama in October. God bless you. We'll see you next time.